Hello. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to day 2. I am just bringing it up here so I can watch or check out your comments as we go. So one moment. How are we all doing? So today, first of all, whether you're watching this live with me, if you are, please feel free to come on and share with me in real time. If you're watching the replay, that's cool too. Let me know and comment as you listen and share your insights, because I want to know how you found day 1. It's been a day now, depending on when you listen to it, and we covered the pressure of perfectionism. So we went into how perfectionism, I would just recommend listening to it, but we went into how perfectionism ultimately means that we aren't trusting ourselves, we're not trusting our instincts, our gut feeling, our inner knowing, because we're trying to plan everything and do everything perfectly. And it also went into how it's a self-defeating prophecy, because when we are trying to be perfect, we are automatically setting ourselves up to fail because we cannot be perfect. It's just the thing. So I'd love to know how that felt for you, especially if you are, like me, someone who identifies with having those tendencies in the past. And today, I'm excited, we are talking about information overload, otherwise known as information fatigue, or just feeling overwhelmed because we cannot tell what is relevant for us. There is so much information out there that how do we know when to start? How do we know what to do for us that is useful for us? Because if you listen to some people in the wellbeing space, again, I'm using the term wellbeing as that blanket statement, but when we listen to some people in the wellbeing space, they are all about one thing only. Just one thing. There are yoga teachers who spout that as well, that sort of say like yoga will solve everything. Yoga helps for freaking sure, but it's dangerous to say that one thing is the solve all for everything. We also hear it from a lot of PTs. None of the PTs that I work with, directly or indirectly or alongside, because they all get it, that it can't be one thing. You have to adapt for your body and for your needs and everything like that. So I'm very fortunate to have those kinds of people around me. But they are just examples. You also hear about different diets. And I use the word diets because when it's a set regimen on what you should be cutting out or what this or that, that's a diet, and that doesn't work for everyone either. There's a reason that some diets that go around in popularity work really, really well for some people and don't really work well at all for others. And they're just a few of the examples, but you know, you could look at environments and, you know, like how people say you should always be in a sunny environment, because that serves you so well for all of these reasons. And the reasons may be true in their own way. Vitamin D, for example, that kind of thing, but different environments work differently for different people. Different jobs, different ways of thinking and approaching things work differently for different people. But when we have so much information coming at us, with that whole thing of this is everything you should be doing, all of it, and it's hard to sort of wade through that and go, yes, but what's relevant for me? It's hard to know what is best for us. It's hard to see the forest for the trees because there's so many damn trees. And that's what we're talking about here today, is arming yourself with what's relevant for you in that information and allowing yourself to leave the rest. And the thing with that is, how do we start? Where do we even go? And this is where perfectionism and information overload kind of are each other's best friends sometimes, you know, in the worst possible way. Like when we have information overload and perfectionism tendencies, we might find that we try to do everything perfectly because that's the only way to succeed. We can't just pick one or two or whatever things that serve us in a different way. We might see that and go, I have to do all of this, and try to do all of it, and ultimately stress yourself the hell out as you do so. And that's awful. That's not the way to be. That's no way to live. I don't care how type A you are. That's no way to live, because you're using energy on things that aren't necessarily particularly useful for you. And for me, knowing how I function, having access to the information that helps me understand how my brain functions, I am all about efficiency. I will put in the work for sure. I will do the things, but I want to know that they're efficient, that they are a good use of my time, that it's not just sitting in this perpetual state of trial and error. Yes, in life there is an element of trial and error that will always be there. Always. We've just we just get to shift our mindset in how we approach that with a sense of playfulness. However, when every damn thing feels like trial and error, and I actually don't have any way of measuring the results either, or having an understanding of why it would be useful for me or why it may not be useful for me, and not really knowing how to benchmark that, it sucks. It's the worst. It's really this dangerous element of expending so much energy and then just burning out, really being exhausted because you're just trying to do all the things and you're trying to take care of yourself, but there's so much information, so you do your best and you're trying it, but it may not, like what you choose to do may not be the things that actually light up your health and well-being. So there is such a mental thing that comes in when we approach, again, our well-being practices, how we structure our lives, how we approach our work, how we interact with other people. I mentioned this yesterday as well. There are so many different ways that we can thrive, but there's also so much information out there, and it gets overwhelming. And when we're stressing ourselves out about something just because we're not sure where to start or how to pick, or we feel defeated because maybe the information that we've chosen, because we didn't know where to start, we just go, well, I'll just try this. I'll throw my hat in this ring and see what happens. When we do that and we don't feel the results, not just see the results, but feel the results of our lives feeling better in whatever way that is. When we're doing that, we feel defeated. We might discount doing things for our well-being altogether. We might sort of go, well, fuck that shit. There's nothing in well-being. Like, you know, well-being practice is just not for me, which is dangerous as well, because when you remove yourself from this whole idea of what is useful for you and practicing what is useful for you, which is really what we're talking about with well-being in this instance, it's dangerous, because then we stop altogether, and then it's a slippery slope all the way down to maybe hitting rock bottom, or maybe getting to a point of stress or lack of energy, or feeling trapped. Feeling trapped is a huge one. Maybe we get ourselves to a point where we feel trapped because we haven't been doing anything, because the things we were doing weren't working, so why should we try doing anything? But then we ultimately feel trapped and get ourselves to this rock bottom point of, well, everything went downhill from there. And it's a really tough thing. It's this balancing act. And the thing is, life always is. Our bodies, our brains are always trying to find balance, homeostasis. Our brains will always look for the horizon line, that center line. It's It's why we kind of get vertigo sometimes, especially when we're in really high places that we're not used to being in, and we look down and it's like, that's not the horizon. Where is the center line? Where is our balance line? So our bodies are always trying to find that. Our brains are always trying to find that. So it's really about how do we know? How do we know what to go with? And that can be the most confusing thing entirely, is how do we know what to do from here? How do we know what is best? How do we measure that without spending so much money on all these medical professionals? And, you know, what do we do with that? Well, how do we do that? So, information overload. If you can think of an example of a time where you have been under information overload and how you reacted, and I will say reacted instead of responded, that might feel useful in this conversation. I'd love to hear it if you have any of those ideas or suggestions as well, or stories, you know, examples of when you have felt that overload, where you felt trapped in essence. I know that I'll choose an easy one. I don't always like going straight to things like food and fitness, because I feel like there's all those other elements that are relevant as well, but this is just an easy one to kind of grasp. So I know that before I started weights training, and I've been consistently weights training for a year now, and it's been the best thing ever. But before I started that, I knew I was missing something. I was practicing yoga, not heaps, because when you teach yoga, you also tend to teach at the times that you would practice, so you don't get to practice. But also when you run your own business, when you're coaching, when you're delivering trainings, it's the same thing. There's a balance that comes in, and that's a whole different conversation. But I was practicing yoga, not heaps, but at least once a week, which is something, right? And I knew that I needed more. I knew that my body needed more. I knew that even on a mental level, I needed more for my body to be doing. And I had an intuitive idea, but I didn't know how to go about that. And if I look at it as having that intuitive idea of going, okay, well, I know that my body needs stability, especially being a yoga teacher in a hypermobile body, especially teaching so much yoga where I am inadvertently, even though I don't particularly teach from the mat unless it's online, I inadvertently am still stretching by teaching and by demonstrating, right? So my body is still getting a lot of stretching. I know that I need stability in order to counteract that. Great, that's the part I do know. But if I had gone, say, to Google and went, okay, how do I stabilize my body? I would have been hit with so many different options that are, you know, recommendations that are out there about, well, you want to do this and you want to do that. And it doesn't mean that any of them are wrong, but it means that I would have spent so much time and energy trying to figure out how I would get the best results. And that's not even looking at what my body needs as far as where I'm dominant and where I need to strengthen in order to balance that out, for example. So I would have felt overwhelmed. I didn't go to Google, but I had the idea of, okay, this is sort of what I need to do. I know some things, but they're not quite enough, so I don't know where to start. And then I just continued. I stayed in that space. I was just like, I don't know where to start. I need someone to tell me. I don't know. It's one of those things like where you kind of know, but when there's so much and you just don't want to be throwing shit against the wall to see what sticks. You want to actually do what's useful for you. And when you're at that stage where you want to just be in that space of doing what's useful for you, then all of the different options do feel like a lot because you don't know where to start, and then you have to decide and then find the balance. And again, you can have an idea, but if it's not your strength, or if you've already got enough going on in life that you don't want to have to use your energy to then figure out another thing about life, right? Like that isn't your area of expertise, or just isn't where your energy and attention needs to go, because maybe you're running a business, or maybe you're working through some heavy shit, or maybe you just value building your relationships more than like figuring out what your fitness regimen should be for your body based on what your body needs, and then working on the balance of that, right? So you can see there's so many different layers. So I was stuck in that. I was like, well, I know what I need. I don't know how to get there right now. I maybe have a trust issue with the fitness industry. I don't want it to be about ego. I don't want it to be just about doing all the things that are going to exacerbate the imbalances that my body already has. For example, for a real life example. So it's looking at all of those things and going, okay, well, I still don't know the answer. So there's so much information I could find, especially in the fitness world. There's so much information available online, which is amazing. It's so, so great. But I could have just sat there and gone, well, holy shit, I don't know what to do next. I don't know what to do from here. And I kind of did that. It was a slow recognition of this is what I need, like stability in my body. So I was able to identify that. Great. Sometimes you don't even know what you need. We'll get to that. But this is what I need. I need stability in my body. I have an idea of how I could do that, but I don't know enough to know all of the best things to start with, all of the most useful things to start with. And I don't know enough about how much to do or how that works. I have an idea, but I just don't know enough. And if I Googled that, I would find so many different opinions. It was a really amazing thing that happened, actually. So that was sort of in the middle of last year that I was identifying this. I'd actually had an injury as well that, even though it was, the need for stability wasn't new information by any means, it just really brought it up because my injury created an excess of that same instability. And I was like, well, what do I do? I don't really know anyone that I trust at this stage to go to, and I don't want to spend money if I don't trust them, or if I don't know that I'm going to get the results that I want. And that's a big thing as well. It's a really big thing. If you don't believe that you're going to get the results, of course you're going to be a bit hesitant. If you don't really trust the person or know who to trust, of course there's going to be hesitance. And it was kind of a magical thing, and I feel like this is the power and beauty in really setting your intentions and allowing yourself to sit with what shows up in you, your internal knowledge as best as it knows, and identify what you do know. Because when you do that, it's like the universe then goes, oh, right, cool, well, let's just make that work for you. We'll bring it in, it's cool. And it's not without you doing the work or taking the steps or whatever either, but there is an element that you need to start by identifying. To get what you want out of life, you need to start by acknowledging what it is you feel you need, even if it's not the whole story, even if it's not completely true, or even if it's a little off base. Start with what you know and go, I feel like I need this. And then that opens you up to learning a little bit more information that might grow your understanding of what you need from there. And then it goes from there. And then it goes from there. And then it goes from there. So what happened for me is I went, oh, Like, I've been injured, and that thing I always knew I needed, I really need it now because I'm actually in pain and I can feel it. So it was a pain point. Unfortunately, us humans work really well with pain points. And went, okay, the challenge is I don't know who to go to. I had conversations with different trainers. They didn't really land. It wasn't to say they weren't good trainers. It just was to say that that whole scenario wasn't the right fit for me, and I trusted my gut on that. I wasn't going to force something, especially when there's money involved. So I went, okay, but I still need this. And then I just kept doing my thing. I kept just doing life and practicing that element of self-inquiry and checking in. And then all of a sudden, I met my trainer through a work thing. So I was just doing life, which was and is doing work. And then I met my trainer, who is my trainer still. And I was introduced to such a great community. And I signed up as a client. That's the word, not a student, a client. I signed up as a client, and we work together also now, but I signed up as a client because I knew that this person was speaking my language. I knew that this person was aware of my concerns about my imbalances, that I didn't want to just lift weights and have ego goals. I really wanted to do things in a structured way, in a programmed way for my body, which meant working on things like squats, but having more education around it because I needed stability, not more quad dominance. It meant working on things that built up my back line strength, so hamstrings and glutes, as opposed to just things that just focus on quads, for example. So if you have an idea of that, of the body, so the front of the legs versus the back of the legs. And I needed to have more pulling movements, strengthening the back body around my shoulders, the back of my shoulders, rather than just pushing movements. They are still important, but yoga especially doesn't include really any pulling movements unless you have props, because it's a body weight thing you can only really push. So again, it's useful, but it's not the whole picture. So I had that suddenly. I met my trainer. This person understood what it is that I needed, what my concerns were. We were on the same page about, the balance of practice, of recovery, of weights training, of slowing down and having rest time when I needed it, but also challenging myself and how to challenge myself in a healthy way. And this created this, and has since, over the last year, has created this whole different understanding of myself. I got to experience this whole different thing of feeling, hey Tam, of feeling stable and what that means to feel stable in a whole new way. And it's efficient as hell, because instead of having to maybe do a strengthening yoga practice every day just to match maybe one or a bit of one weights training practice, I'm just saying what's worked for me. This isn't actually an ad for any of that, but instead of doing that, I was able to go, oh, this is efficient use of my time. I'm building up stability, and oh, this is how I feel stable in my body. And we know, and I share also, when we feel things in our bodies, we feel that same thing emotionally and mentally. It shows up emotionally and mentally. So when I feel stable in my body, I suddenly feel safer and stable in my head. I feel safer and stable to sit with my emotions. It doesn't mean they're not big when they're big. It doesn't mean I don't need to still process them, because I still need to process them. But there's a safety feeling because there's a stable feeling. And it's all of these things, right? But if I had just tried, getting back to that information overload, if I had just tried to go it alone, in an area that I have an idea of, but I just didn't know enough about, in order to be really efficient with my time and energy, which I really, really value and I really need to value. And I encourage other people to value for themselves as well. But if I had just decided to go it alone, yes, and figure it out. I mean, I could have done some good things, but I know how I work as well. And I know that if I have to sit there and create my own program and then tell myself that I'm doing it, hey, Heather, then I'm not going to do it. I'll just be like, oh, this must be enough. Okay, cool. And it won't be anywhere near what is useful for me. Whereas going to someone for a specific thing, to give someone who I trust, who, you know, you kind of vet the people that you work with as well, but someone who I trust and someone who's on the same page as me and who listens to me, to my concerns, doesn't just try to drive in their agenda or their opinion. They listen and hear me, which is super important as well when it comes to receiving information. I was able to get more out of the time I've spent in the last year feeling that sense of stability. So that's one way I've approached information overload. Another way is by accident. It's different things. It's, again, kind of what we touched on yesterday. It's feeling into and trusting your inner knowing. If something doesn't feel right, but you don't know where to start, you kind of just ask, like, maybe you talk to a trusted friend. Or maybe you seek out someone who is an expert of sorts in that space, whether it's a coach or a professional of sorts, right? And that helps us determine what's relevant for us a little bit more. And we don't need to know all of it all at once. We can take it step by step. In fact, it's better when we do. Because sifting through what's relevant for us can take time if we don't have the resources available. Sifting through all of that information just to find what's relevant for us is tiring. And I think that's what I'm doing here as well, is as part of my work, is I know what it's like to just feel tired and exhausted of trying and not really feeling like you're getting anywhere because you don't really know what the hell you're doing in some areas. Sometimes you really do. Sometimes things feel good. But why do we have this glass limit on ourselves of once we feel a certain level of good, that's good enough, right? Like, why do we not go, okay, I feel this good and I've come this far on my own. What else can I do? How much better can I feel? And how much more intentional can I be with how I'm spending my time and energy? It's like, that was a decision I made when I hired, for lack of a better word, there's a whole description of what she does, but for ease, I have recently hired a business coach, and it's in a program, it's in a group program for the next 12 months. And it already feels amazing. And the way I got to that point was I was reflecting, and it was July, August or so. I was reflecting to where I was a year before. So there's a lot, it's been quite a year. But I was reflecting to where I was a year before. And a year prior, I had been, like, I was noticing things slowly coming on board with what I wanted. And I was working really, really hard for what looked like little reward in the time. Everything, builds on itself. We know this. So I was trusting the vision. I still am, all of that. But I was working really, really hard and things were slowly, but really last year was a bit of a slog. It was a bit of a trudge of pushing shit uphill. And a lot about it was useful. A lot of everything I've done, even in that feeling, allowed me to then receive what I've received this year as a result. Because if I hadn't, then those opportunities wouldn't have presented. But I got to the point where I'm like, you know what? Okay, I'm in a really aware position where I don't want to go through a year like that, but I know that there's still work to be done, for sure. I wonder if I've brought myself this far in a year without that professional help of a coach. How much can I keep creating and getting towards my vision in a really sustainable way for my time and energy as well? Because I value having space, because when I have a space, I can create more that serves my people, my clients better. It gives them more. But if I don't have space, I'm in a stress space. So I'm like, okay, well, if I've come this far in a year on my own, yay me, like high five, sure, like recognition is really important. How far can I go in a year with support? And then bam, it just happened. And it's just started, like we're in the first month. It's been so useful just to have someone to bounce off. In a professional context, I've had very, very good friends, and especially in the last year, that I've been able to do that with as well, and I'm very grateful. But at the same time, it's not their job. It's not their job to do that. So it's not fair to just put all of that on them just because. So there is such a big thing to be said about the information that you have in your head and having someone to help sort through it. So when we find ourselves in information overload and trying to find what's relevant for us as far as our well-being practice across areas like how we do eat, our food, our fitness, how we move our bodies and how we best do what we need to for our bodies, but also those other elements that are so equally as important. Our environment in which we live in, how we socialise, how we work, how we think. When we are just trying to sift through all of that, it's no wonder we are in this perpetual state of overwhelm. 10, we are our worst enemies sometimes when we want to reach our full potential. And actually, that's a great point. Thank you for sharing, because that's the thing. We should all be feeling like we are able to step into our potentials. And I'm not just saying, rah, 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 we can be all that we want to be and we can be these big, expensive things and all like this high energy stuff. I just mean about your health and well-being. I just mean about what makes you feel good, because what makes me feel good will be different, more or less, to what makes you feel good. And that will be different to what makes the next person feel good and healthiest and most expensive in their own lives. So, the whole phrase of like living our best lives, that's what it means. It's not about this ideology that we're trying to meet for other people or what other people say is what we should meet. It's about how we feel and feeling our best in the best way that we can. Knowing that we're not always going to feel fantabulous, because we're human, it's life, and that's okay. But exactly what you say then. Why are we creating our own roadblocks to move forward? Instead of going, okay, I'm still going to have, that natural wave of life. Maybe the ripples ease out a little. Maybe they're not these big dumping, like, valleys that we then have to deal with and then climb our way back up, and these extreme highs. Like, maybe it's just a lot easier to ride because I feel so much better, because I'm doing for me what I need to do for me, and that's the best, and I know what that is. That just feels good to me. Like, it just feels good, and I know that is what I want to do for my clients as well. That's what I want to do here in this space. Whether you're doing a program with me or not, whether you're here just for the information that you might find in your newsfeed every now and then, or whether you actively watch each of the videos that I share or read each of the posts that I share. It's about making sure that people are empowered with the information, but also the ability and the guidance and the metaphorical permission slip. I'll write a physical permission slip sometimes if people need to do that for themselves. So it's actually a really great segue because the reason I was a little bit late with this live stream today is because I was just setting up the final parts of my upcoming 12-week program. And I'll explain a little about it. Thanks, Heather. Yeah, it was the best idea I could do because I feel like I have a pretty good idea about business, but it doesn't mean that I know everything. And when it's your own, it's forest for the trees and there's distractions and you kind of want to do it all. So thank you. Yeah, it's been so helpful. But the reason I was a bit late is because I was just launching the cart for my 12-week program. And this program, it starts on the 26th of October. It's a Monday. And you might be wondering, 12 weeks, doesn't that run into Christmas? It does. So we have a 2-week break over Christmas, and then it continues for the month of January. So really, it's probably 14 weeks in total from start to finish, but that 2-week break in the middle, because that break is really important. And I'm very excited to have that break as well. It's the first year since being in business for myself that I'll actually be able to have the 2 weeks stress-free also, which is amazing. And that downtime and then doing the things that I know fill me up. So I'll just share the link here, but I'll talk to you about it. The 12-week program is called Redefine Your Legacy, because I feel like how we approach our lives, how we live our lives, and how we allow ourselves to live up to our own well-being is, yes, definitely accountability, Tam, also. That's part of it, right? Because we can do things and then we can kind of just be like, oh, just let it slide, and there's no real, you have to be so disciplined, and that's a lot of energy as well. But this whole idea of what feels best for me in those 6 areas specifically. So in the program, we spend a fortnight on each area. We have a training each week. It's a live training, but you can catch the replays because I've got it set up all in Teachable, which that link will take you to. And we have a live training, and then we have an implementation week. But we also get to talk about it throughout the week in the community. So it's a group program. We'll have a Facebook group that I've just set up as well, and it's ready. It's ready to hold you and hold that space. And we cover each topic each week based on your personal profile. So I've been also this year qualifying as a personalized health coach, and that means that I can coach from a platform that overlays 15 or so different sciences to build your understanding of your personalized health type. So that's based on things like your biology, epigenetics, I said epigenetics, biology, epigenetics. It includes Ayurveda and Chinese medicine as well as part of those sciences, because they are all really relevant too. So all of these different sciences, which is what I love about it because it's science-based, creates your profile based on the measurements and the questions when you set it up. So they have specific questions. So that's what we'll be moving from. So as a part of the program, you get 12 months membership to that. We set you up ahead of start date, and we have a one-on-one, and it's a goal-setting activity as well as part of that. And then we dive into the weeks. I have special guests coming in for at least one of the topics, but potentially for some of the others I have to set up, because as I said, like, I can speak to all of these things, but I'd rather get someone who's in that particular industry because it covers things like food, fitness, environment, working, thinking, socializing, all of the things I've spoken about the last 2 days. So you will have special guests coming in to share from their perspective because they are in that realm more than me. We have the group, and we have the implementation session where there's questions and you can bring statements from your profile. That'll all make sense once you set up your profile, because you see there are statements that are aligned exactly to you. So explaining how your brain works in a certain socializing scenario, for example, and a tip on how you can optimize that for you so you're not stuck either. You're not stuck in this hole of, well, that's just me. You get to go, okay, this is me, but this is how I can optimize my approach to this. This is how I can come to a sense of peace with it, because I may not understand, for example, how someone else does that, because I do things this way, but this is how I can work with it. So we work on each of those things each fortnight, and we are especially focusing on integrating the holidays, the holiday period, into how we approach these things as well, particularly with food, because I know it's an area of stress for people, and it may be even more stressful this year because of COVID. Depends on who you are, depends on your situation, but it's an area of stress for people because they either blow out completely over the Christmas period, or they feel stress and pressure to remain perfect in their diet over that period as well. So in all of these areas, especially around food and socializing, because that's the people you're around and what you need, we're integrating the holidays into that as well. So while we have that 2-week break, in the lead up, we'll be speaking about those things. We'll be looking at those things and going, okay, let's actually workshop some things based on what your plans are for Christmas or New Year or for whatever it is. So this has been such an exciting thing to create, because it just speaks to everything that I feel like is useful. It helps give you the information so that then you know exactly what we're speaking about today. Then you know what is useful for you. What is most useful for you, because science, we have the ability with this platform for science to tell you what's useful. So there's less questioning, there's less energy spent on, well, I don't know, I'm just going to try this. And as fun as that can be, when that's everything that you're doing constantly, it sucks. It really does. So I'm really excited about this 12-week program. Cut is officially open. So you guys are the first to see it. In the link that I've shared in the comments, you guys are the first to see it. There are different payment options, because I also understand that one of the big blocks in doing what's right for your well-being is money. Being able to afford to. Feeling like you can't afford to hire the people to keep you accountable, or to help give you clarity in your vision, or to help coach you through it. So there's a pay in full option, but also a payment plan option to make it much easier for you, because I want it to be something that's accessible for more people. And this is one way I can do it. And this platform allows me to do it, which is great. I love technology. It really is. It's so useful when it means that we can do this. Oh, yay. Thank you, Tam. I'm so excited. I think you get so much out of it, actually, just thinking around things like work things and mostly work things, and using your brain, I think, as well. So how you think, but your environment, just as a guess. But so that's why I'm so excited about it. And the title of it, Redefine Your Legacy, is because how we live our lives, it doesn't matter if you have children or not. It's not, it is about that, but it's not about that. It's about deciding to live your life the way you want to live it now, as opposed to when you get to your later years. Even then, it's still not too late, but if you're in it now, you're in it now, as opposed to when you get to your later years and wishing that you just sort out the information. So I've also qualified as an NLP practitioner and life coach in that, kind of similar to what I've already been doing a lot of the time, but that's being interwoven into it. I actually start the master's program for NLP and life coaching today. It's a 12-week program, so I'll be going through my own 12 weeks, because practice what you preach, right? So those are things that we'll be interweaving as they come up, as things come up. So it's helping to shift mindset blocks that you might have around certain things, or what things mean to you. So all of these things are really designed to give you this structure, the scientific information for your biology, that gives you what you need to know in order to optimize how you feel in your life across those 6 areas. how you feel health-wise. And I don't just mean your immune system, that's a big thing as well, but how you feel health-wise, energy-wise, mentally, emotionally. Your mental and emotional health is so, so important. So these are all things that we get to explore in a big way, and 12 weeks is a great time frame to do that, because it's enough to, especially with the ongoing coaching and the supportive community, it's enough to carry you through to create new understandings around what that means for you, and how you can be gentle with yourself on it, or kind to yourself on it, or challenge yourself in ways that maybe you haven't before, in a good way. Sometimes what we need is the challenge. If our default is to step back and go, oh, I'll just sit this one out. Sometimes what we need is that challenge of accountability, like you said, Tam, earlier. So I'm really, really excited. You guys are the first to see it. I'll be sharing them as public posts, that link soon today, but you guys get to see it first because you're here on the live stream. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I love these topics in themselves. So even if this is what you get out of it is yesterday's thing around looking at why perfectionism gets in the way of you trusting yourself, or today is acknowledging the overwhelm you might feel with the information overload that can happen and not knowing what to do. Just acknowledging that is a big thing. But if you're interested, the link is there. Ask me any questions that you have. The container's ready for you. There's still things that I'm adding in for sure, but the container is there. It's ready, and I'm so excited. So we have one more day of this What About Wellbeing live stream, and I keep looking down, my notes are down here. Awesome. Heather, I feel like it would be really useful for you as well, just to give you that information so that you don't need to feel so lost, right? So my notes are down here. We have one more day, and our topic tomorrow is how well-being leaves a mark. So that's where we really dive into the idea of legacy and how what you do leaves a mark for yourself in your life. Even once you stop doing it, it's what you do on purpose, what you do with purpose leaves that mark, but it also benefits those around you, which is the other thing that we kind of forget sometimes. And it's not just by leading by example, that's a huge thing as well, but it benefits them in so many ways. So I'm really excited to talk about that one too. I feel like I've been speaking for ages. This has probably been really long, so I'm gonna leave it for today. But if you are watching the replay, or if you've checked out the Redefine Your Legacy link, feel free to just sign up if you're ready. Great, that's amazing. I have some special things for those who do sign up that aren't mentioned, just as little celebration things for you as well, that have been really fun to play with, because it's just so great to step into that space for ourselves and celebrate ourselves as well. So yep, it's there. Sign up when you're ready, or ask any questions if you're unsure of anything, or if you just want to know more information. Totally understand that as well. And I will see you tomorrow for our last day of the What About Wellbeing live stream. So thank you again so much for joining me.